Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and good afternoon once again to all our beloved speaker and all clinical postgraduate students. Alhamdulillah, with our blessing and rahmat, we are able to gather once again in this virtual meeting for the Unified Islamic Input for postgraduate clinical School of Medicine. All students, gentle reminder, this Unified Islamic Input is compulsory to our kuliah, not only for Kuliah of Medicine, and this is actually already began since the intake of 2021-2022. And for the centralized topics, these topics will be delivered by our speakers from centuries. Last month, the topic is on worldwide, and today the topic is on Islamization of human knowledge. This topic should be the last on the list, however, we'll bring it earlier due to some technical issue. The other two topics will be Islam and knowledge and Islamization of the self will be delivered later on subsequent months. Before we begin, I would like to introduce a bit our speaker. He is Assistant Professor Dr. Ramzi Bendebka. He holds a bachelor's degree in international relations from the University of Algiers. He also holds a master in international relations and PhD in Muslim world issues from IUM Malaysia. In addition, he is a contributor to different well-known sites and platforms like Asia Power Watch and Modern Diplomacy. Dr. Ramzi Bendebka is also an editorial board member and a reviewer in several journals around the world, like the Journal of Islamic, Social and Economics and Development, Journal of Advanced Research in Social Sciences, Liberal Arts and Social Sciences International Journal, and the Journal of Humanities and Social Sciences Studies. Without further ado, I would like to invite our beloved speaker, Dr. Ramzi Bendebka. Thank you, Dr.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you, Dr. Saiful, for inviting me and for this introduction. First of all, there are two notes or there are 2 points that I would like to share it with you before we start our discussion. So the first thing I assume means our discussion will be based on that. I assume that all of you already accepted the idea of Islamization, and therefore we are going to talk about the process, not about how we can, introduce the Islamization as theological topic or as Aqidah topic. And the second point, inshallah, the learning outcome, we will go for 3 sections. The first one will be introduction to the topic, and this introduction will be as the context for why do we need Islamization of the human knowledge, means what are the reasons for this idea and for this concept. And then we move to the second part when we are going to go for more details, introducing the concept itself and dealing with the concept itself, the policies, and also the categorization of knowledge in Islam. And then the last topic will be the strategies of Islamization of the human knowledge. So the technical thing, we keep it for the last, but more than that, we will try, inshallah, to understand why do we need the process itself. And if we can deal with this, and if we can finish our discussion today by understanding the context and understanding the reasons and understanding everything that we need to deal with when we talk about this concept, inshallah, it will be successful, inshallah. So let's start first. I will share with you the whiteboard, inshallah. Please let me know, what do you know about the Islamization of the human knowledge in general? Please share your ideas with us, and let's see how far you understand this concept itself. Anything comes to your mind when you heard this word, Islamization of a human knowledge? I think you must know something because you are in International Islamic University. Islamization is the heart of IIUM, integration of Islamic input in current knowledge. Bendebka. Not sure much, came here to learn, mashallah. Knowing Islam in modern era, okay? Islamic values in every knowledge, Islamic values. How about the others? Any ideas? Or if you want to talk, you want to share your ideas with us, you are more than welcome. Practicing Islamic values in everyday living. I think we should start. Let's start our topic, and by the time, inshallah, during the lecture, please, if you want to stop me, please let me know. Just mute yourself and let me know if you have any questions before we continue to another step, inshallah. Also, I would like to say that we are going to cover the other topics, okay? So Islamization of self, Islam, and knowledge also, and also the worldview, because are all together in this topic. So let's start, or let's ask this question: what is the starting point when we talk about Islamization of the human knowledge? That is the starting point that we need to refer to, okay? So the starting point is not to mention the beauty of knowledge and to mention, I mean, the position of knowledge in Islam, as most of the people are talking about, because we already knew that. It's not something new to talk about knowledge in Islam and the beauty of knowledge in Islam, and that it's a duty, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us to seek knowledge, the Prophet ﷺ, and our deen is a deen of knowledge. All of these kind of things we already knew about it. So I would like to start from preconceptions and obstacles. Preconceptions and obstacles to Islamization of human knowledge as a starting point. And not only the Islamization itself, but in general is about Islam. What are the preconceptions and obstacles among us as Muslims? Okay, it's not the Western view or the other views. We try to see it from a Muslim's point of view, or even the non-Muslims who are living with the Muslims, how they see Islam and what are the issues that we need to deal with first, okay, to be clear about it. So The first thing is the repetition. We are talking a lot about repetition. What I mean by repetition, we are always saying why we need to talk about Islam all the time, or why we talk about Islam too much in the mosque, in universities, in our lectures. Why we need to talk about Islam too much? Okay, the second thing is the basics, and I will explain this after that. And the third thing is the relationship between what we know and the other fields, and then finally the small things in life that can make the change. Okay, so the first, why there is a repetition? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran in Surah Muhammad said, فَعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لِذَنْبِكَ. Why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this to the Prophet ﷺ in Medina, means after 13 years of da'wah in Mecca. And the scholars benefit from this verse, and they said that even after 13 years or 14 years of da'wah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps saying to the Prophet ﷺ, فَعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ, means know the meaning of La ilaha illallah, wastaghfir li dhanbik, and then practice it. So even after 14 years of da'wah, and he is not anyone, he used to be the prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps telling him, Ya Muhammad, i'lam annahu la ilaha illallah. Means after all this duration, we need always to remember that talking about Islam is a continuous process. Okay, it's a continuous process. It's a daily process. It's not something that we learn it when we are or during the childhood and then it stop there and it's finished. Or it's not something that we listen it during Jumu'ah prayer and it's finished. Or not something that we read it time to time and stop there. No, it's a continuous process. As the Prophet ﷺ did, as we need to follow our Prophet ﷺ. So we need always to learn our religion. We need always to learn our deen and raise our level of understanding of different aspects around us based on that. So this is the first thing. Also, the process of learning, as I said, is a continuous process. Is a continuous process. So sometimes we understand something from the Quran and the Sunnah in another era, like contemporary one. We need to understand other things, and we can benefit from Quran and Sunnah on that. Okay, it's a continuous process. So today you read something, and tomorrow when you read it again, you will see that there is a development in your understanding, or there are things and new things that you understand it from that text or that article, and therefore you will benefit again and again and again, over and over. And the last thing is the challenges and issues are different. Okay, so sometimes and in many cases when we read the books, I mean Islamic books, the fiqh, specifically the fiqh, and we see things, we need to understand that the issues and the challenges are different, and therefore we need another level of ijtihad. Okay, we need another level of ijtihad to deal with our realities. It's not just reading the fiqh and reading the Islamic books and we try to practice it all the time as it is, because sometimes there are challenges and issues that we need to deal with, and therefore we need ijtihad and we need to look at it again and again and again. And this is one of the benefits of repetition, to listen and to deal with the Quran and the Sunnah, to deal with Islamic books again and again. And it's supposed to be something that we do it in daily basis, because this is the real thing and the real matter in our life, as we are going to see after that. So the second point, when we talk about the basics, I mean here the same level of understanding Islam and the same level of practicing Islam. And this is something, unfortunately, became very obvious among the Muslims, which is something, I cannot say which is something dangerous, but which is something we need to avoid it, and we need to wake up. Okay, we need to wake up based on that. We cannot keep the same level of Islam, even if we are advanced in other aspect in our life. Okay, I cannot become a medical doctor, but I keep the same level of my understanding of Islam. Okay, and it cannot work like that. Okay, some people they still, for example, they still praying with surah, for example, with al-mu'awwizatayn and qul huwallahu ahad since a long time ago. Okay, you used to pray for 10 years or 15 years or 20 years or 30 years. So we need to raise that level of Islam and raise that level of understanding. We cannot keep the same level. Okay, if we don't memorize Quran, we try to memorize new verses, we try to memorize new surah, we try to develop ourselves in this matter. We cannot keep the same level because there is another question, which is the question of integration. You see, so if you are a medical doctor, means the medicine and the understanding of your field of study will be very high. At the same time, the understanding of Islam will be very low. And therefore, there is a question of integration, how you are going to integrate your field of study with Islam. It will be very difficult to do that if we keep the same level of understanding Islam. And of course, finally, the decision making, our life based not on opportunities, and I don't believe on opportunities. Yes, there are opportunities, but sometimes you may have 1,000 opportunity, but if you don't take the decision to take this opportunity, therefore the opportunities became meaningless. Okay, there is no benefit from opportunities if you don't make the decision to take one, right? And therefore, the life in reality is decisions. What decisions are we making in our life? And imagine, based on this understanding of basic understanding of Islam, if you would like to make a decision even that concern your field of study, you will find it very difficult. Why? Because you miss the integration. And why did you miss the integration? Because you are keeping the same level of Islam and you are not trying to develop yourself in this matter. And also, what we talk about the relationship, what's the relationship between our fields of study like medicine, health, pharmacy, economy, all the field of study and Islam? It's our duty actually to find this relationship, or we can say it's fardu ain to find this relationship. You see that nowadays, so many people are talking about talking about Islam and our fields of study as a dichotomies, especially in the writings. Okay, it's like a dichotomy, means something in the West and something in the East. There is no relation between Islam and medicine, for example. Why? They said because medicine, the concern of medicine is the body. Okay, is the body of a human being, and therefore, what's the relation between this field and Islam, for example, which is more spiritual and more ethical? And there is no, there is no relation between these fields, and therefore it's our duty to find this relationship and work on that because there is always a relationship. And finally, this is also the relationship with another sense, means with other studies. For example, what's the relationship between fiqh and health issues, for example, and medicine? What's the relation between this and that? What's the relation, for example, between health issues, fiqh, and personal life? Okay, the decision that you are making in daily basis. So there is this relation that we need to look for, and we will discuss it after that a little bit. And we see, for example, the Shafi'i rahimahullah, how he made the relation between medicine, for example, and fiqh and usul al-fiqh. You will see that there is a strong relationship in reality between these fields. And finally, we talk about the small things in our life. Small things in our life, in reality, sometimes we don't think about it, and we don't think how our worldview means how we see the life and how we see the world around us. in simple word, okay, how we see the world around us. It started from the simple words and simple things and simple meaning that we don't even think about it. I would like you to imagine your position as a medical doctors and what the community and sometimes our parents, for example, how they see some issues, some medical issues, right, with their mind. You may see that they don't have that knowledge to understand the situation, but even though they still talk about so many things, which is in reality a part of customs, has nothing to do with knowledge. Okay, if something happened to you when during childhood and your parents used to deal with that issues, body issues, for example, it's based on customs, on culture. But after you became a medical doctor, now you understand that those kind of things and issues has nothing to do with science, has nothing to do with knowledge. This is one thing. The second thing that you need to make sure to understand it is that even if you became a medical doctor, there is something that you need to understand it in this life, which is the philosophy behind the knowledge. The philosophy behind the knowledge. You cannot just become a medical doctor without thinking about the concepts, for example. There are so many concepts came with this knowledge, okay? And one of the examples that I always mention it to my students, this example, the word client. You see, how come, even if we are not, even for non-Muslims, we can still think about it. How come if someone came to our clinics and came to our hospitals suffering from something, okay, feeling pain, and they are suffering, maybe they didn't sleep for nights, but finally you see that nowadays we are calling them clients and we are calling them customers. You see, it's like the same way they go to Jaya Grocer or TMG, something like that. You see, so we are dealing with them based on these words, okay, without even think about it. Why we are calling them clients, and how we develop how we develop this concept to become clients and customers is the same concept that we find it in economy, the same concept that we find it in a business, okay? But have we think about it before? Why we are calling them this? Someone who is feeling pain and someone who is suffering, and we are calling them clients and the customers, and this is for a purpose, okay? Because we are going to talk about it because of the globalization and the modernity. Things change around us, and that's what built our worldview, means our view to people, our view to life. And we need to be careful on that, because if we say that, for example, this word or this concept are simple, why we need to think about it, for example? No, in reality, there is a philosophy behind your worldview and how you see the world. And therefore, by accepting this kind of concept, by the time we are going to deal with the human body as something, as other items based on modernity and based on materialism, therefore we need to be careful on that. You see, it's just the simple words, it's just a simple concept, but there is a philosophy behind it. I assume that many of you, they didn't think about it before. I assume that I don't know. If I am wrong, please let me know. When you see, for example, in our clinics and in our hospitals, the word client, the word customers, this kind of words, but we may use it and we may think it's something simple and that has nothing to do with philosophy, and has nothing to do with our worldview and how we see the world. And therefore, the real matter before we Islamize something, and that we are going to talk about it, the real matter in our life, it's the purpose itself. What's our purpose in this life? Because if we will be clear about the purpose about our life, therefore we will be clear also about the challenges. We will understand the challenges. What are the problems and what are the matters? Even if we take it in a small area like your field of study, just you think about medicine. If you don't have the purpose and if you don't understand the purpose of medicine itself, therefore you cannot be clear about the challenges that you are facing in your field of study and in your field of in your field of work. And therefore the purpose of life must be clear for us. What is the purpose and what's the real purpose in our life? Is it the life itself? Is it the life and the akhirah? Is it al-akhirah? Is it something else? We need to be clear. Why? To decide what are the challenges that we need to deal with. Okay, so if our purpose in life include the dunya and the akhirah, and therefore the challenge will not be the same like someone which his or her purpose is the dunya itself. Okay, so I assume that our purpose is to be successful in dunya and akhirah, or what we call it in Arabic, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned it in the Quran, al-falah. Okay, al-falah include success in dunya and in akhirah. Therefore the challenges might change. Okay, we cannot see the dunya, we cannot see things like the others. Okay, because there is something always with us, which is how we can be near by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What are the things that can make us near by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We are seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wajh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ لَا نُرِيدُ مِنْكُمْ جَزَاءً وَلَا شَكُورًا. We don't want something in this dunya, but we want the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what we want in our life. Therefore the challenges will be anything or any obstacles that can stop us from this objective, realizing this objective. I repeat it again. If our purpose is the dunya and the akhirah, to be a medical doctor, but at the same time I am a khalifa, I am a Muslim, I am someone with risala, with amana, as the Prophet ﷺ said, because the deen and the Islam is amana itself. And therefore my challenges may change also. Why? Because my worries will be not the dunya. My worries will not be how to, for example, how to make money or to get a new position or to do this. Yes, this is something normal in the dunya, but it's not a priority. Our priority will be the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Means anything that can stop me to be near from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it will be a problem to me. Okay, that's what we need to understand. And then finally, the fundamentals, because if we don't have a clear purpose in this life and we don't understand the real challenges in this life, therefore maybe the fundamentals of Islam will be in danger. What does it mean? Means by the time we will not care about our aqidah, we will not care about our deen, and therefore this is a sign of backwardness that we are suffering nowadays in the Muslim world. Okay, so when we talk about the history of movement, we can call it a movement of Islamization of knowledge or Islamization of the human knowledge. Human knowledge, it doesn't mean human sciences. Okay, the human knowledge means the knowledge produced by a human being. Okay, we differentiate it in this way, because there is a knowledge which is sacred knowledge, which is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there is what we call it a human knowledge produced by a human being, include medicine, include pharmacy, economy, biology, all this kind of knowledge we consider it as a human knowledge. As a movement recognized by so many scholars, started in the mid of 1970s. In reality, this movement is old as the Islam itself, means since the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, but the contemporary movement started in the mid of 1970s as a term or movement by Sayyid Muhammad Naqib al-Attas rahimahullah, proposed the concept of the Islamization of knowledge. Its goal was to separate knowledge from Western culture and civilization. We will talk about it. and replacing it with Islamic principles, frameworks, and values. It's question of values, it's question of principles, and also we can say it's question of methodology. Which methodology need to use? Is it the Western methodology or Islamic methodology? And this concept gained traction in the 1980s, especially by Al-Faruqi rahimahullah, and all of you know what happened after the tragedy of 9/11 in the United States. So this process or this movement slowed down due to internal and external factors in all Muslim countries. Okay, so what's I mean, when we talk about the mid of 1970s and 1980s, and we talk that is a Western culture and Islamic culture, what's the starting, I mean, the starting point of all of this, or the situation during this time, is a question of what we call it a modernity. And the modernity, we can talk about it as an era that stopped by 1970s, or we can talk about it as knowledge, as a theory, okay? And we are going to talk about it as an era and also as a theory or a concept. So after the independence, there was an issue in all Muslim countries, which is the issue of education. Okay, and the starting of state, establishing of state is the hardest thing in this world. It means how to establish the jama'ah, how to establish a state, a country. Okay, it's not something easy to begin with, and therefore, after the independence, almost all the countries, Muslim countries, 58 Muslim countries of 60 Muslim countries, and then we can include all the third world, they were suffering from this this establishment or this issue, how we can start a state or a country. Okay, it's not an easy matter. The first point that they may face is the question of identity. The question of identity. Look at, for example, this country. The starting point during 60s, 50s, and 60s, are we Malaysians or the Muslims also? So we add another identity. Are we Malay, or there are other ethnicities? Are we this and that? So it's a question of identity. Look at the Middle East. Till today, for example, they still have this question of identity, the issue of identity after the independence. Okay, some of them are Arabs, the others are non-Arabs, and both of them, maybe they are Muslims, and there are Muslims, Muslim Arabs, and Christian Arabs. And at the same time, the Muslim Arabs, they are Shia and they are Sunnah, and the Sunnah themselves, they are Mazahib and this and that. So, and therefore, it was a question of identity. We didn't know which point must be chosen to start and establish this state and establish our countries, and therefore itself, the independence itself became a problem for us. Okay, so we gained independence, but it became a problem for us. Okay, and this is for a purpose. So the colonized power did this for a purpose. Okay, they divided the countries and they did everything for a purpose. Okay, for their benefits. They divided us and they kept us as the situation as it is for their interest. So the question of identity, after that, we realized that after this a question of identity, we went to what we call it the social-economic or socio-economic problem also. Okay, the division of resources, for example, the division of resources. It's an economic issue, but it's mostly and roughly based on the issue of identity, because after we divided the identities, and therefore the socio-economic or the division of resources will be based on that. Okay, We see, for example, in some Muslim countries, in some Arab countries, for example, you see that the people who are in power, the families who are in power are controlling the majority of resources of that country, for example, based on identity, who you are. Okay, why we are saying all of this to finally came to the point of modernity, and you will see the strong relationship between the modernity and the globalization and what we are suffering nowadays. And therefore you will realize, why do we need to Islamize the human knowledge? Okay, and therefore we move to wars. As you can see, the wars are everywhere based on this and that. And finally, it's a question of globalization, starting from 90s till today, when we are suffering from so many issues concerning globalization. Globalization, yes, has what we call it a positive part, which is, for example, technology and devices, but this is not enough. This is not enough for humanity, and this is not enough to build civilization. Okay, so we need other methods. We need the culture, we need ethics, we need values, we need so many things to build civilization, not only technology and what globalization came with. Why I said why we need to talk about that? To realize, brothers and sisters, that in many cases we need to see the concept. Any concept came to us, we need to see concept from our point of view, not from the others' point of view, or not what the others may think about that specific concept. And here we are talking about modernity, you see? So modernity for the Western civilization, for the Western people, is something positive as an era. You see, as an era is something positive because it came with globalization, it came with technology and this and that, and the science and so on and so forth. So it's something positive for them. But what we see modernity from our perspective and from our understanding, we see what we talk about it right now. So unfortunately, the modernity for us as a Muslims, or even as a third world, means include all the countries that used to be under colonization. In reality, it's a negative concept, because during this era of modernity, in reality, we were suffering from the effects which is after independence. As I explained to you, we suffer from the issue of identities, the socio-economic issues, the wars, and so on and so forth till today. Therefore, we never take the concept as it is. You see, and this is just an example. Modernity, globalization is just an example to us. And therefore, that's give us another question. What's the process to deal with this kind of concept, which sometimes we may see it as a good concept, but in reality, if we see it from our perspectives as a Muslims, as I said, or as third world countries, how we can explain this kind of concept and this kind of theories or this kind of ideologies, which is very dangerous in our context. Okay, and therefore we need to be ready for that. Even there are some concepts that sometimes when I talk about it with my students, for example, in many cases we use the word think outside the box. Okay, in creative thinking we say think outside the box, but we need to be careful on that, because sometimes thinking outside the box means think outside the Quran, think outside the Sunnah, think outside the Deen. So you see, so firstly, the first thing that we need to do always is to understand this process. After we hear the words, or after we read the words and the concept, we need to question it first. Okay, we don't just react. Okay, we don't just react or we take it as it is. Nowadays, we are taking the concept as it is, as it coming from the West. We are just taking it and make it a part of us, and we try to develop ourselves based on that. Okay, you see that nowadays, if someone is thinking outside the box, we consider him or her as someone who is creative, has wisdom and this and that. But we need to question, thinking outside the box. Which box? Modernity, which modernity? Our modernity or their modernity? You see, as I explained to you, you see that era was a negative era for us. Okay, we used to suffer at that period of time, and therefore it may need the process in our mind how to explain and how to deal with the concept before we use it, or before making it as a part of our knowledge, or as a part of our worldview, means how we see the world. Al-Masiri, rahimahullah, understanding of reality. Al-Masiri is a distinguished scholar from Egypt, but he used to live in the United States of America. And alhamdulillah, he's a distinguished scholar in all over the world, actually, all over the world. Respect this scholar who is Al-Masiri. And alhamdulillah, he used to be here in IIUM, Gombak, in Istak, actually. He used to teach in Istak for, I think, for a period of time during 2012, something like that, for 4 years. He used to be there. So he's a distinguished scholar, and he explained the reality. And he said that knowledge nowadays is based on three main factors. So the first one is comprehensive secularism. You see, so comprehensive secularism, al-Almaniya Shamila. Okay, in Arabic, we call it al-Almaniya Shamila. Comprehensive secularism is one we distinguish between the state and the life of people, or the state and the human being, okay? And the state, or sorry, between state and religion, okay? So there is no relationship between state and religion, okay? And therefore, you may see that a lot of aspects in our life became meaningless because of that, and because we taken it from the context. We said that Islam, or the deen, is for the mosque, the deen is for the churches, and the state and the government is for the people, and there is no relationship, okay? Means don't mention Islam and don't mention something about Islam when we deal about the state matters. This is comprehensive secularism. And the second step of secularism that we are testing it nowadays, which is a more dangerous one, which is partial secularism, or what we call it al-Almaniya al-Juz'iyya. Partial secularism is to separate the human being from the values and from the ethics. Okay, it's a process to separate the human being from the ethics and from the values. Okay, we are not questioning about the values and about the ethics, and we take it as something normal because of globalization. And the dangerous thing about globalization and reality, it's not just to the positive. The positive point. Some people may say that globalization opened the world and open the knowledge and make knowledge easier. But at the same time, don't forget that this globalization itself try to make people equal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, قُلْ هَلْ يَسْتَوِي الَّذِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Okay, they are not equal, the people who have knowledge and the people who don't have knowledge. But in reality, globalization try to make the people all together at the same level in terms of worldview, not in terms of knowledge. In terms of worldview means how they see the world. And you see nowadays, for example, they are trying to make the medical doctors and to make the professors and to make the farmers at the same level. Okay, in terms of, for example, in terms of expense, for example, in terms of business. Okay, we all go to the malls, we all try to buy the same thing, we all deal with the devices. Okay, you deal with the devices for your field, the others, they deal with the devices in their fields. But in reality, they are trying to make our view of this world equal. We will be all equal. The second thing, for example, if you see it in social media, in Facebook, in Twitter, in all social media, you may see that the same thing happened. Okay, so then even people without knowledge are not respecting the people of knowledge, and they are trying to talk and they are trying to make themselves understand what they cannot understand. And you may face this a lot, especially you as a medical doctors, and especially during the For example, during the MCO, for example, you see people, anyone can talk in social media, even without knowledge. They don't know even they don't know even the basics of the body of a human being, but they still talk about COVID. They still talk about vaccination, against the vaccination, for example. They are talking about so many topics which they have no clue about it. Okay, and this is one of the negative aspects of globalization, to make people equal. Anyone can talk, anyone can touch your field of study. Anyone can deal with you, even if you are a doctor. You study all your life, but finally you find people in social media without that level, and they are trying to talk to you, and they are trying to be against you, and maybe they have followers, like what we call them nowadays, the influencers, and they have followers, and okay, they are convinced people to do something, and subhanallah, people may accept what they are saying, and they don't accept what you are saying as knowledgeable people. This is the negative side that I want to highlight it in this concern. Okay, and finally, perceiving reality, which is very important. How we perceive reality has a strong effect on our way of seeking knowledge. You see, so if we separate, firstly, if we separate between state and the deen, we will have a specific knowledge. And also, if we go to partial secularism, for example, when we go to partial secularism, we will have another level of knowledge. And finally, our way of perceiving the reality, how we see the reality and how we interpret it, also may affect our knowledge. Why I'm saying that? For example, why we are seeking knowledge, why we want to become medical doctors. Okay, it can be based on perceiving reality. We see that the reality in our society, that medical doctors, they have what? They have a position, for example, and therefore I would like this position. But remember what I told you when we talk about the purpose and the challenges. Maybe you will not find the real challenges in your life. Okay, some people, they spend years and years and years until today, maybe they cannot be clear about the challenges in their own life, means personal life. Okay, why? Because they need first to understand the purpose. What's the purpose of the first place? Is it to have a position in our societies? Yes, it can be that, but it cannot be as priority. But if it's priority, therefore how you perceive knowledge and how we use your knowledge will be based on that. Will be based on your purpose in this life, will be based on the purpose that you use it to seek knowledge at the first place. Okay, so knowledge or ilm, in Arabic we call it ma'rifa. Okay, ilm or ma'rifa, and the science we call it, or sciences we call it al-ulum also. Okay, so the definition, technically, realization of the meanings of things. This is the definition of Al-Ghazali rahimahullah, or the famous definition, the realization of something in its true nature. You will see that in Islam and knowledge, inshallah, next week. Okay, realization of something in its true nature. Okay, a perception of an object as it is, means to see it as real as it is. Okay, a firm belief that accords with the reality of things. Okay, but we stick with the second definition, which is realization of something in its true nature. Okay, in Arabic we say إدراك الشيء على ما هو عليه إدراكا جازما. Okay, على ما هو عليه, in its true nature. Okay, if it's not true nature, therefore we cannot consider it as knowledge. Okay, so Sayyid Muhammad Naqib al-Atnas rahimahullah, he said, to know how to put what knowledge in which place is wisdom. Okay, means knowledge, in simple word, he said knowledge is wisdom, is the hikmah. And also he said that otherwise knowledge without order and seeking it without discipline does lead to confusion and hence to injustice to one's self. He said discipline, and in some texts he said adab. Okay, seeking knowledge without adab. And what does it mean, adab and discipline? Itself is a hikmah. Okay, means there is a purpose behind seeking this knowledge. It's not just seeking knowledge, for example, to become a medical doctor, but there is a hikmah behind it. There is a wisdom behind it. For that, there is what we call it the adab and the values and ethics that you need it to seek knowledge and therefore to use it in a proper way. So there is also a difference between what we call it knowledge and what we call it information. Nowadays, a lot of people, they don't distinguish between knowledge and information. Remember that knowledge is a realization of something in its true nature, okay? And therefore, we understand that there is a process, okay? There is a process. When we talk about knowledge, there is a process. For that, when we talk about medicine, means there is a process how to learn this discipline, right? And that's what we consider it knowledge. There is a methodology, okay? And that's what we consider it knowledge. However, information is a general data. It's something that we find it in social media, for example. It's a general information. We cannot consider it as proper knowledge, okay? And also, the process is not only with the knowledge itself, but also with you, okay? When you receive something, okay, when you receive data, there is a process in your mind, how you analyze it, understand it, and therefore you react upon that. But information, it's something that we find it everywhere, and it's something general, and anyone can express it as he wants. And it can be a question of numbers, a question of words, images, and even it can be sounds. Okay, it's something which is not a process. It's just a data. Okay, it's just a data. A comprehended and internalized information involves a personal experience, and this is very important, very, very important. The personal experience, for that I am telling you, one of the negative aspects of globalization, okay, is to make people equal. Okay, someone who doesn't have experience in this field still can talk about your field of study. Okay, someone who is not a medical doctor, someone who has never tried this knowledge and this science, which is medicine, still can talk about medicine without what we call it a personal experience in terms of studying or in terms of working. The information can be shared much more easily understood by everyone. Anyone can understand it. Okay, information, as I told you, usually what we find in social media. However, knowledge is made up of factors such as information, beliefs, and experiences, questioning also. We do have a lot of questions. We need to end. There is a process also, and there is a methodology how to realize and benefit from the information, and that's what we consider it as a knowledge. And finally, information perceived differently can be shared, but may be perceived differently. That's what we call it also knowledge. Okay, so obstacle of acquiring obstacles of acquiring a beneficial knowledge. Why it is difficult sometimes to reach the beneficial knowledge. The first thing is the wrong worldview. Okay, it's the wrong worldview, means the wrong way how we see life and the wrong way how we see people around us. Okay, can be one of the obstacles of seeking the beneficial knowledge. And the second one, weak spirituality. Weak spirituality or faith or values or ethics cannot lead to beneficial knowledge. It can be, by contrary, will be harm knowledge, okay? And also we have ideologies of learning institutions. There are some ideologies, and finally the corrupted social environment. Why we are talking about ideologies here? Because sometimes if you believe on something and that thing will be wrong. For example, if I believe on materialism, if I believe on naturalism, for example, atheistic worldview, for example, it may affect my way of dealing with with science and dealing with knowledge itself. And finally, the corrupted social environment. Okay, sometimes there is a corruption in terms of the culture and how the people think around us, and therefore we cannot seek the beneficial knowledge. Why? We adopt this corrupted social environment and we just act and move based on this environment, okay? We surround to this environment around us, and therefore we cannot see the beneficial knowledge. The beneficial knowledge, in simple word, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق. هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق. So the scholars, they said al-huda here means al-ilm al-nafi', beneficial knowledge. ودين الحق means al-amal al-salih, good deeds. Okay, and the scholars, and one of them was Shafi'i rahimahullah, he said that what is al-ilm al-nafi'? So it's like Ramzi, you are talking about beneficial knowledge, but at the first place, what is beneficial knowledge? So the scholars, and among them Shafi'i rahimahullah, they said that beneficial knowledge is the knowledge that can be used by the ummah and can be beneficial for all the human being. We consider it as beneficial knowledge, okay? And there is an issue here. Unfortunately, nowadays, we Muslims, we still dealing with this issue. Even it used to be very clear, which is, for example, ulum dunya and ulum akhirah. We still have this mentality that this ilm is for dunya. Okay, this ilm is for dunya, medicine is for dunya. Okay, pharmacy is for dunya. Okay, and the Islamic studies is for the akhirah. You see that this verse, it's contradict this concept between ilm dunya and ilm akhirah. Even some scholars talk about it, and they said this is one of the classification. It's just a classification, but you need to understand something, brothers and sisters, that if something became not useful for us as a Muslims, and they have an article, but I wrote it in Arabic about this matter. If something became not beneficial, even the classification of knowledge in this way, we need to avoid it, okay? For example, and my level, for example, I don't like to use ulum dunyawiyya and ilm al-akhirah, means this Islamic studies is for the akhirah and this medicine is for the dunya, okay? Because sometimes someone who is medical doctor, but with his Islam, he is seeking the akhirah more than someone who is in Islamic studies, for example, and some people in Islamic studies in reality that are using Islamic studies for dunya matters, okay, for the dunya matters, okay. So therefore, it has no meaning. In reality, we keep the previous classification of knowledge that came, for example, by so many scholars, and again, we mentioned Shafi'i here. So the scholars in the past used to talk about and distinguish between two types of knowledge, which is fardu ayn and fardu kifaya. That's all. If your ilm, it's not fardu ayn, it became fardu kifaya. Means the word fard still there, okay? It's always something that we need as Muslims, okay? So if it's not fardu ayn like aqidah, like Quran, like the Sunnah, it became fardu kifaya. Means some people must do this. Be still a fard, okay? Has nothing to do with dunya and akhirah and this and that, okay? So and this is very important and very crucial also when we talk about the ilm. So the roots of the crisis in wrong thoughts and methodologies, when we read articles, when we read books, when we try to understand something in our field or the other fields, the roots in reality, it's the education, the system of education itself, as I explained to you, starting from independence or before that, the colonial period, starting from there, when we used to have this kind of problems of education. And the most of scholars of this movement, Islamization of human knowledge, they focus on that. They focus on education. They said this is the starting point and this is the real challenge, is the education. the problem of education, and the system of education itself has a problem that we need to fix it before talking about something else. We see, for example, the current duality in education, okay, divided into two systems, one Islamic and the other secular. You see, so we are trying to divide, and we are trying to harm ourselves by having this kind of duality in reality. There is no integration between Islamic education and what we call it other sciences, and therefore we have this two systems which are fighting all the time. Okay, Islamic and secular system. Okay, so therefore we need to do something about it, and therefore this is one of the real matters that we need to look at it. And it started with, as I told you, with the colonial period, and after independence and keep till today, which is a very dangerous matter in reality. I will give you a clear example what happened to my country just last week, to see that this is the real challenge in our world. Okay, so last week 1,200 medical doctors went from my country, Algeria, to France. 1,200 last week. Okay, is a very huge number, and we are also waiting for another unfortunate news that another 400 medical doctors are going to Canada, Quebec, exactly to Quebec. Why? Because they speak French language. Why? The question is why? Because the education system in my country based on French education system. Okay, and therefore, for example, we learn French language since our childhood. Okay, and this is for a purpose. Since our childhood, we started speaking and talking French language and learning using the French language. This is the first thing. The second thing is the opportunities. Okay, the opportunities means once we finish our studies, we always have the opportunity to go to France. Okay, so it's like they open the doors for us, but it's not in reality because of this system of education. And finally, they are against any Islamic matters in our system of education. We don't learn Islam in our system of education, only at the basic things, as I told you in the beginning of this lecture. It's only the basic things, and therefore the Islam is not there. And therefore, if you don't take care of yourself to understand Islam by your own or by asking the others, you may face this issue of secularism. And by the time you may feel that you are more French than Algerian. You see that my government spent a lot of money, a huge amount of money to teach and to form this medical doctors, but finally the France gain it by ease. Okay, it's just a simple test, one-day test, and therefore if they succeed, and therefore they go to the second step to move into France, and we are not talking about 1 and 2, we are talking about 1,200. Why all of this? Because the system of education kept the same since the colonial period. You see, so they gave us independence, but the system of education kept the same, but it's for their benefits. So anytime they want to take people, or they want to take knowledgeable people or medical doctors or anyone they want, they can take it by ease because they are always ready in terms of language and in terms of the way of thinking and in terms of knowledge itself. Okay, knowledge without Islam, knowledge without ethics, knowledge without values, and therefore it's easy for those people to adopt, and it's easy for those people to integrate with the new societies in Europe. And therefore the question is the question of education. So what is Islamization of knowledge? Islamization of knowledge based on Al-Faruqi rahimahullah consider Islamization of knowledge as an ideological program of Islam and its academic excellence. He also conceptualized it as an epistemological and methodological movement. What does it mean, epistemology? Epistemology, in simple word, in the way, in how we see things and in the way, the source of knowledge itself. Okay, so the source of knowledge itself, as we are Muslims, must be the Quran and the Sunnah. Means each time we want to deal with something, we always ask if it's compatible with the Quran and Sunnah. Can we take it or not? Can we take it or can we reject it? Okay, this is a question of epistemology and methodology. Okay, therefore we cannot accept any words, we cannot accept any concept came to us by ease. Okay, even especially in medicine. Okay, so anything we need to question it first if it's compatible with the Quran and the Sunnah. We see the ethical parts, the values. We see if it's harmful or not. Is it halal or haram? These kind of questions that we need to ask it, and we need to make and we need to be sure about it before we take it and involve it in our education or involve it in our process of knowledge. Sayyid Muhammad Naqib al-Attas argues that the ultimate goal of this movement is to equip the Ummah with knowledge and education on an intellectual basis and framework. Okay, intellectual basis and framework inspired by and imbued with Islamic revealed knowledge and its worldview. Okay, it's to add our understanding of Islam with the process of knowledge. Okay, it's not only secular, it's not only a simple way, a simple process of seeking knowledge. No, we include the Islamic input, we include the Islamic view. And how we can do that? By involving the Quran and the Sunnah. Okay, and involving the Quran and the Sunnah, and we are going to see this after that, inshallah. Any questions so far?
So far, no, Dr. Ramzi.
Okay, Dr. Saiful, we should continue, or you would like to take a break for 5 minutes and then we continue? It's up to you.
I think we can continue. We can continue.
We can do that, alhamdulillah. So what is Islamization of knowledge also? Islamization of knowledge is relating knowledge to religion, okay? To have this side of religion. And when we say religion, it doesn't mean to impose religion, okay? When we talk about religion, we talk about spirituality, we talk about values, we talk about ethics, we talk about halal and haram. Always remember this, always remember the purpose of life, okay? So the purpose of life, if it's al-akhirah, so it must be always that. Why? Because knowledge itself is the highest ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the highest thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave it to us, knowledge, okay? And therefore, this ni'mah must be compatible with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to us, okay? Because He created us and He knows what is better and what is good and what is bad, and therefore we need to stick for this and we need to follow what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said considering this matter. That's how we believe as the Muslims, because Allah created us, and therefore we need to see always what is good and what is bad based on what He said and based on what the Prophet ﷺ said also. So Islamization is a discipline that describes the development of a person's character and Islamic identity. You see, so Islamic identity as a way of life, a worldview in which the concept of knowledge or epistemology and the concept of God, theology, are seen as integrated. Okay, so we are seeking knowledge, but at the same time, behind this knowledge, we do have a purpose. Okay, so we do have a purpose, which is the purpose that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us for it. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. So our knowledge became a way of ibadah. Okay, so our knowledge became a way of ibadah. That's what we're supposed to do with knowledge and seeking knowledge. Islamization of knowledge or human knowledge is a comprehensive phenomenon what re-establishes the knowledge on its original basis according to the light of revealed knowledge, according to the light of revealed knowledge. The relationship that I talk about it in the beginning of this lecture, the relationship between revealed knowledge and, for example, your field of study. We need to find it. It's not we need, we must find it, and we must understand it. We must understand at least this part. Okay, we must understand this part of revealed knowledge that has a direct relation or indirect relation with our field of study. In this case, it's pharmacy. It's medicine. Okay. So policies and institutions. When we talk about the institutions, we talk about specifically Malaysia. Okay, so the institutions of Islamization of human knowledge, most of it are here in Malaysia. But if it's not in Malaysia, you may see that the people who involved in this process in the world has a relation with Malaysia, specifically IIUM universities. So the first one is IIT, International Institute of Islamic Thought, and the IIUM, our university, ISTAC, which is International Institute of Islamic Thought and Civilization, and then Islamic universities co-sponsored by OIC, Organization of Islamic Countries, the Islamic Academy, Cambridge, and many theories and many thinkers around the world. But fortunately for Malaysia, alhamdulillah, most of these scholars, they have a direct relation with Malaysia. They used to be here, most of them, they used to be here specifically in IIUM and ISTAC. And if they are not here, they always have a relation with the Malaysia, especially in the Muslim world. When we talk about the policies and we talk about the mission and the vision of IIUM University, we can see that the platform I mean the platform and the foundation of this university based on the process of Islamization of the human knowledge, the process when we can make Islam as a leader of our knowledge, which is to undertake the special and greatly needed task of reforming the contemporary Muslim mentality and integrating Islamic revealed knowledge and the human sciences in a positive manner. Again, human sciences here include all the science, okay, produced by a human being, as I told you, include medicine, include science, include all of it. And therefore we need this integration. It's not only Islamic studies, or it's not only secular studies or separated studies. No, we need this way of integrating things and make it one, okay? In the way of seeking knowledge, in terms of process, in terms of methodology, in terms of accepting the concept, and finally the practice, how we practice our knowledge in our life, and how we practice it, as a work, and how we deal with it in our daily basis in positive manner. Okay, so classification and categories of knowledge, we already talked about a part of it when I said that I prefer to say, for example, that we have fardu ain and fardu kifaya. Okay, we do have fardu ain and fardu kifaya rather than ulum dunyawiyya and ulum akhirah. Fardu ain and fardu kifaya. If we say fardu ain and fardu kifaya, you already have this relation. You see, you already have this relation between Islam and medicine, for example, because if the Quran and the Sunnah and the Aqidah are fardu ain and the medicine is fardu kifaya, so between them there is the fard, okay? So there is something already there. And as I told you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, bil huda هو الذي أرسل رسوله with knowledge, beneficial knowledge. Okay, he sent the prophets with the beneficial knowledge. Okay, even medicine. For that, for example, we have prophetic medicine as a famous book that you can download it. Is a famous book that you can download it from the internet. Prophetic medicine by Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya rahimahullah, 600 pages. He mentioned all the things that the Prophet ﷺ talk about it that concern the field of medicine, means the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. He talk about the honey, talk about milk, talk about so many products, for example, talk about the stomach, talk about the heart, talk about some diseases, how to deal with. You can find it in prophetic medicine by Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya rahimahullah. So in question of classification, why there is, for example, the differences between madahib, for example. We do have differences between Shafi'i, Maliki, Hanbali, Hanafi. For instance, you are Shafi'i and I am Maliki, for example. Okay, so as a question, for example, we can benefit from this, right? So what's the difference between madahib? Why there is the differences between madahib? Is it a question of understanding or? Can anyone try? It's I consider it, you know, I always say that the simple questions are always the difficult questions, right? So sometimes, for example, when I ask my students, how do you know that Islam is a true religion? They found it's the hardest question to answer. And sometimes it's very difficult actually to answer these kind of questions suddenly.
Ramzi, someone in the chat box mentioned that it's because of difference in interpretation and understanding.
Different in interpretation and
understanding.
Oh, okay, but there is a question here. If it's a question of understanding, even inside Madhab Shafi'i, there is a lot of aqwal. So even the scholars inside the Madhab are different. I can mention so many things. For example, in Madhab Shafi'i, when Ibn Hajar rahimahullah, for example, contradict what Nawawi said, for example, and then Nawawi contradict what Shafi'i said itself. Okay, and sometimes, for example, Ibn Abi Hatim, who is Shafi'i, contradict Shafi'i himself. Okay, so even inside the madhab, there is these differences. I know that so many people think in this way, but has nothing to do with this. Okay, we used to learn and we used to listen to this, and there is a difference in terms of interpretation and in terms of what we call it, in terms of understanding. But even inside one madhab, you know that, for example, madhab Hanbali, there is two aqwal. In many cases, there is two aqwal. So the first qawl, and after that, he changed this qawl to another one. And there is, there is so many things in between. In madhab Maliki, the same thing. Okay, in madhab Maliki, the same thing, and in madhab Hanafi, the same. So therefore, it's not a question of interpretation only, or a question of understanding. Anyone that wants to try? Or you want me to explain it anyway? Okay. So Inshallah, you will benefit this today, inshallah, and then you will be clear about your madhab and what's the difference between your madhab and the other madhabs. It's not a question of differences. You need to understand something that all the madhabs, the four madhabs, and we do have other madhabs, but those are the famous one. The four are the famous one. Okay, so the first thing we need to know what they agree about it. So all the madhabs, they agree about three things as the sources of seeking knowledge. They agree about three things: the Quran, the Sunnah, and the Ijma'. Okay, those are the three things that they agree about it: the Quran, the Sunnah, and the Ijma'. So you find it in Madhab Shafi'i, in Madhab Maliki, in Madhab Hanbali, and in Madhab Hanafi. And then at the fourth one, they start to differentiate. For that, starting from the fourth sources, we understand. We understand if you are Shafi'i, or if you are Maliki, or if you are Hanbali, or if you are, Hanafi. Okay, it's based on what you choose at the fourth and the fifth, and so on and so forth. So, for example, in Madhab Shafi'i, the fourth one is what? The fourth one is Qiyas. If you go to Madhab Hanbali, for example, the fourth one is Qawlu Sahabi. If you go to Madhab Maliki, for example, the fourth one and the fifth one is Amalu Ahli al-Madina. Okay, so the work of the people of Medina. Okay, Amalu Ahli al-Madina, the people of Medina at that time. And there is always a logic behind it. Those are not the simple scholars. It's very, very sophisticated till the point that you cannot imagine how they make the details and why they choose this and that. There is a logic behind it. And at the same time, it's very sophisticated. For example, Imam Malik rahimahullah, he said, if I don't find it in Quran and Sunnah and Ijma', I will see the amal of Ahlul Medina. Why? What the people of Medina are doing. He said, because the Prophet ﷺ used to live among them. You see, if someone came to Kuantan, for example, and live for 30 years or 40 years, and he used to be famous and this and that, and the people follow him, for example, and after that, who can be more experienced with his life and what he used to do, what he used to eat, what he used to drink? The people of Kuantan themselves. So this is the logic of Imam Malik. So he said, we follow the people of Medina. When you see the people of Medina, which is in Saudi Arabia nowadays, he said, because the Prophet used to live there, and therefore it will be very easy to see what they are doing, and therefore we can understand that this is the work of the Prophet sallallahu amalu Rasul sallallahu, and we can follow it. Ash-Shafi'i, he said, we need the qiyas. Immediately we need the qiyas. And for example, in answering Madhab Hanbali, he said, if it's amal as-sahabi or qawlu as-sahabi, we already know it in Sunnah. We can find it in Sunnah, so we don't need it. We need something else, which is al-qiyas, and so on and so forth. The Hanafi, the same thing. They said qiyas, but the qiyas in Madhab Hanafi is not the same in Madhab Shafi'i. What I want you just to understand, not the details, I want you just to understand that the madahib agree about three elements: Quran, Sunnah, Ijma'. How they differentiate at the fourth one, which is the fourth one. Some of them they choose qiyas, some of them they choose amalu ahli al-Madina, some of them they choose qawlu sahabi, and then the fifth one also they distinguish in the fifth one and the sixth one, and so on and so forth. So three are the first three elements agree about it, and starting from the fourth one, we can see the disagreement, and therefore for that we do have the madahib and different interpretations that you can see nowadays. Why I'm mentioning this? Because this is the starting point of knowledge. Starting point of understanding knowledge is what the madahib did, is the Quran and the Sunnah and Ijma'. We need to understand this. At least we need this level of understanding of what we have in Quran about medicine, in the Sunnah about medicine, and in Ijma' about medicine. This is the starting point. The second thing that we can benefit, for example, why Ash-Shafi'i like Ibn Abi Hatim, used to be a medical doctor. So many of you, they don't know that Shafi'i rahimahullah used to teach medicine after Isha prayers. Okay, why? Shafi'i used to learn medicine because Shafi'i saw that medicine is a part of what we call it the fiqh of salat and the fiqh of siyam. Okay, the pillars of Islam has a direct relation with the pillars of Islam. You see, so he said there are some issues that concern the body that can stop us from making the fatwa concerning what? Concerning the salat. Okay, concerning the salat, if something happened to you, how do you know that you are obliged to pray or not? How do you know that you are obliged to pray in your bed or no? For example, how do you know that you are obliged to what? To fast or no? You see, for example, fasting as a pillar in Islam. You see that in reality, medical doctors in many cases are making fatwa by one way or another. And therefore, integrating this part in the understanding is very crucial. You see, so when you deal with the patients and you say that you cannot fast, for example, or you need to drink this, you must drink this. Okay, in reality, this word, you must do this, okay, you must drink this treatment, for example, or you must eat this treatment. In reality, behind it, there is a fatwa. When you say you need to eat and you must eat during the Ramadan, for example, indirectly you are making a fatwa, and therefore you need to understand this part in the fiqh, which is the fasting, for example. What are the ahkam of fasting? To be more sure about what you are saying, okay, to be more sure on what on the hukm that you make it in reality. The same thing when we talk about salat, the same thing when we talk about hajj. Who can perform hajj, for example? Who cannot, based on the capacities, body capacities also. So Ash-Shafi'i rahimahullah, because of the Islam, he chose to learn and understand medicine and then teaching medicine based on Islam. For example, you see, in Madhab Imam Malik, for example, a lot of people, they don't know that Imam Malik used to be, for example, also someone who had a book, for example, in physics. We call it al-waqtu wan-nujum, time and the stars. And why Imam Malik rahimahullah has this method, which is learning physics, time, the stars, also again because it has a direct relation with the deen. You see how they integrate between Islam and another field of study. They integrated everything because of Islam itself. Okay, so Imam Malik, he said rahimahullah, remember during that time we don't have watches, we don't have azan, we don't have material like nowadays. So how we can know that this is the time of salat? How we can know that this is the time of fasting? How we can know that this is the time for hajj, for example, okay, without material during that time? That's what you can, that's what you need to understand it. So therefore, based on Islam, because there are some issues that concern fiqh, they started understanding all the fields of study. You see, so there is a strong relationship between medicine and fiqh. There is a strong relation between physics and fiqh, for example. There is a strong relation between psychology, and here we can find psychology and philosophy, for example. And here we can find an Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah and then Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, the same thing. So there is always this integration and the relationship. Okay, so link with the sciences, sources of knowledge, Quran and Sunnah, the system of education, all together used to work together. And therefore, for that, at that time, the Muslims can build what we call it, a strong civilization, which is based on science, which is based on Quran and Sunnah at the same time, because everything on their life used to work for Islam. You see, for Islam and for the Muslims. For Islam and for the Muslims. And after them, of course, we can say that it's for all, the whole humanity, because Islam is for all humanity. So the sources of knowledge in Islam are Quran and Sunnah. Okay. Now we want to integrate something which is not Islamic. What we can use the Islam, what we call it, the Islamic knowledge. What is Islamic knowledge? Is the Quran and the Sunnah. And here, also we talk about the universal knowledge and necessities, which is the fitrah, aql, and what we call it, the senses. So after the Quran and the Sunnah, we do have what we call it the fitrah and the aql and the senses. The fitrah, if intuition that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put it in us. Okay, sometimes we know that this is something wrong without even establish it, without even think about it. Okay, we know that this is something wrong. Okay, someone who is hitting a baby, for example. Okay, we know that this is something wrong. It's in our fitrah, in our intuition that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put it in us. Okay, and also we do have al-aql, that we need to use it to understand things. And finally, the senses. You must understand that all the knowledge that we have it in this world based on these three elements. Okay, nothing is outside these three. Okay, when we talk about medicine, for example, a part of it is aql, part of it is a fitrah, and also we do have senses. Why? Because it's a question of experience, also dealing with the body. Okay, so everything based on these three, and therefore we need to look at this. So the general classification of knowledge, we do have absolute knowledge, which is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Muslims, we believe that this knowledge is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because it's absolute. No one of us can be can understand it. And we do have what we call it limited knowledge that can be divided into transmitted knowledge and or gifted knowledge, and also acquired knowledge. Transmitted knowledge or gifted knowledge, it's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave it to us in simple word. It's a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's Quran and Sunnah that we just talk about it. The Quran and the Sunnah is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, it's transmitted knowledge that we need to realize this, and we need to deal with it based on that. And therefore we do have what we call it fardu ayn and fardu kifaya. The blame, what we call it, the blameworthy knowledge, and this is the dangerous one. It can be by external factors or also an inherent. Okay, there is a difference. Blameworthy. I will give you an example. Sometimes we try to understand things, but to avoid it. Okay, it's not to practice it. It's a blameworthy if we practice it and we don't take care about it. For example, in economy, for example, we study riba, right? We study benefits and interest, bank interest, for example. So the benefits and the interest and the riba that we discuss it in economy, in reality, the objective is to avoid it. Okay, it's not to practice it. Once we practice it, it became something blameworthy. Okay, it became something blameworthy. Same thing in medicine, same thing in so many fields. Sometimes when you understand something, is to use it in a good way. Once you use it once you use it in a bad way, therefore we consider it as what we call it as an external factors. In reality, you are trying to use something good to realize something bad. And that's what happened, for example, especially during the 90s, what happened in Libya, for example. Okay, one of the medical doctors used to kill people in the hospital for so many years, and finally they realized that this doctor used to inject the patients with the poison that he created. Okay, and therefore he used something which is noble, which is good medicine, to realize something bad, but with what we call it external factors. External factors means the medicine itself, it's not something bad. By contrast, is praiseworthy. It's something that we need it in our societies. It's fardu kifaya, and in some cases, it's more than fardu kifaya. It's became fardu ayn, especially for you. Once you establish this field, it became fardu ayn for you. Means you must be good in what you are doing in medicine. So this is just an extended explanation of what we want to explain, and why we are talking here about blameworthy and praiseworthy. It's because sorry, it's because what you can see here, for example, also by external factors, sometimes, as I told you, when we accept and adopt concepts, so many concepts, we accept the concept, we accept the philosophy behind the knowledge, and therefore it became something bad. For example, we accept medicine, but at the same time we accept the atheistic ideas or atheist ideas, okay? So we accept it at the same time. We accept their philosophy, and it became what? It became something it became something blameworthy. For example, you cannot become a medical doctor if you are wearing hijab, for example. And we went to question this. What's the relation between hijab and medicine? Hijab and knowledge, for example. But in some cases, they are trying to show us that if you are ethical, if you are a religious person, therefore you cannot do this. You cannot establish this knowledge. And we know that this is something, something wrong. But unfortunately for so many Muslims nowadays, they accept it with one way or another, directly or indirectly. And they may think, for example, for you, if you are too, you are trying to be strong in Quran and Sunnah, for example, you are trying to do something with your level of Quran and Sunnah, they may say that, oh, you are focusing on something else. You are focusing on something that has nothing to do with medicine. But as I explained to you, there is a strong relation between what we call it fiqh, usulul fiqh, for example, and medicine. I told you about the Shafi'i, I told you about Imam Malik and so many scholars. They used to be scholars. And by the way, you must understand something, that most of the medical doctors in Islamic history used to be fuqaha. See, so most of Islamic scholars, Islamic medical doctors, Muslim medical doctors used to be fuqaha. Most of them are fuqaha in reality. Means they understand fiqh, at the same time they are medical doctors. Why? Because they told you that they care about the body as they care about the spirit. Okay, they give the right of the body, at the same time they give the right of the body. For instance, Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah, he said, you cannot go. You know that in Madhab Shafi'i, there is one saying that it is forbidden to go to any part in this world if we don't have two kind of people. Shafi'i rahimahullah, he said, you cannot go to any place when you cannot find a medical doctor and when you cannot find a scholar. Why? He said, because the scholar is for your spirituality and for your values and for your deen, and the medical doctor is for your body. If there is place when you cannot find both of them, therefore this place is not good for you. It's not a place that way when you can live. Okay, so they both work together and they both must be there together. So this is the importance of classification of knowledge, is to know what is good and to know what is bad, and to classify it based on that, and to adopt what is good and to reject what is bad. And this is one of the process of what we call it Islamization of human knowledge. Another classification, which is the classification of Ibn Khaldun rahimahullah. He said intellectual knowledge, when we have logic, when we have natural sciences, physics, medicine, all of it, he called it intellectual knowledge. Okay, intellectual knowledge. And transmitted knowledge is Al-Quran, Al-Hadith, jurisprudence, and the sacred law, theology, Sufism, linguistic sciences, and so on, so forth. Why he classify it like this? So according to Ibn Khaldun rahimahullah, he said transmitted knowledge is something wajib from the beginning, which is something wajib, means the Quran, the Hadith, the fiqh, the aqidah. We must have an idea about it. We must master it. Master this means transmitted knowledge. At the same time, he said intellectual knowledge is based on capacity, because itself is fardu kifaya. It's based on capacity. But according to Ibn Khaldun rahimahullah, And this is one of the matters that you need to understand. And he said, rahimahullah, once you have this capacity of taking this knowledge, it became fardu ain for you. Subhanallah. So he said, once you realize that this knowledge, you have the capacity to seek this knowledge, it became fardu ain for you. Means because you do have the capacity to become medical doctor, therefore medicine, according to Ibn Khaldun rahimahullah, became fardu ain for you, only you, not for the other people. For you, it became fardu ain. It became like transmitted knowledge for you. Means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to ask you about it as he asked about the transmitted knowledge. You see why we are mentioning all of this, and since the saying of the scholars, the saying of the mazahib, and this and that, just to show you this relationship and this strong linkage between what we used to consider it as the ulum dunyawiyya and just the science, and has nothing, and this knowledge has nothing to do with Islam and other matters. In reality, hopefully you realize that even the scholars from the beginning, they realized this, and they said we cannot separate it. We cannot separate this intellectual knowledge, for example, from transmitted knowledge. We cannot separate fardu ain from fardu kifaya. We cannot say that medicine has nothing to do with Islam, Quran, and Sunnah, because there is always this relationship. Okay, so therefore we came to the real matter, which is the last part in our discussion, to see the techniques and to see the strategies how we Islamize the knowledge. Okay, well, now I have tried to give you an idea, the reasons why we need it, and what's the real problem, and from where we can start, and what the scholars talk about it, and how we used to be during history, what's the relationship between your field of study and Islam itself, and so on and so forth. And now the real matters are the matters that we are always talking about it. And again, I will say that we consider it as a simple question and a simple thing, but in reality, we always find difficulties how to explain this kind of issues, okay? And again, I would like to ask you, we always say that as we are Muslims, we are implementing the Quran and the Sunnah. So the question is how we implement this. What is the application? How we are implementing the Quran and the Sunnah in our life? I assume that all of you will say so, okay? We may say that we are following the Quran and the Sunnah, and the Quran and Sunnah must be there, and we love Quran and the Sunnah. The question is how you are applying the Quran and Sunnah, how you are doing this. What's the process of doing this? Because if we don't know how to, or the process of implementing the Quran and the Sunnah, therefore how we are going to Islamize our faith, how we are going to Islamize medicine if ourselves we don't know how to implement the Quran and the Sunnah. Okay, so this is a real matter that I want you to answer it hopefully, inshallah. So any answers? Sorry, I didn't read this, Dr. Seafood. So we still have some time, and inshallah we conclude. Inshallah, I need to do this.
Sure, so, can Dr. Ramzi, can.
Okay. So any answers? Okay, I will repeat the question. So we say that the Quran and the Sunnah is a part of our life as Muslims, and we need to implement the Quran and the Sunnah. My question is how we implement the Quran and the Sunnah, means the application, how we apply Quran and Sunnah in our life. Before we talk about medicine, how we apply the Quran and Sunnah in medicine, how we apply this in our life. What's the process? For example, for you, when you listen Hadith, when you listen Quran, how you apply this? Based on what? Okay, okay, Dr. Nurul, it's about Ridwindemiyan. I'm talking about the process itself. Okay, when you read hadith, when you read ayah, how you understand this hadith or this ayah? What's the process? I'm talking about the process itself. Okay, because of time, I'm going to answer this directly. So the first process is what we call it, what in usul al-fiqh we call it taqlid. Okay, taqlid. When we want to approach something, we always approach that thing by its scholars. Okay, its scholars. I cannot, for example, understand medicine without medical doctors or without a scientist in the field. Okay, the same thing when we have Quran and the Sunnah. The first thing of implementing the Quran and the Sunnah is by taqlid. You are, for example, Shafi'i, so you follow Madhab Shafi'i. You follow Shafi'i scholars. You see, so when you follow the Shafi'i scholars, that's what we call it taqlid, because they have a specific process how to implement the Quran and the Sunnah, and therefore they have a specific way how they understand it, and therefore you implement it. So you pray. It doesn't mean there is a difference between your praying and my praying and the prayers of the others. No, but there is a specific way of understanding. Therefore, you are following your madhab and you are following your own fuqaha. You are following your own scholars in this matter. And that's what we call it taqlid. Okay. But the things is taqlid, it's not always something good. Okay, and refer again to my introduction when I say we cannot keep the same level of Islam. The same level of Islam, it's something not good. And the scholars, even some scholars, they said that we will be questioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the day of judgment about it. We need to raise our level of understanding the Quran and the Sunnah. So we cannot keep the same level in terms of application. We cannot always follow the scholars and the ulama and the madhab in everything without trying to increase our level of understanding in Islam, without trying to understand better and go for what we call it the ijtihad. Okay, why we are talking about this? Because the process of Islamization of a human knowledge cannot be by taqlid. You see, cannot be by taqlid. As I told you, we do have new issues. When we talk about your field of study, there are a lot of contemporary issues. Okay, Shafi'i didn't see, for example, the problems of genes that we have it nowadays, vaccination, this kind of issues that you have it in medicine. And therefore, we cannot deal with this kind of issues with taqlid. So we need to raise our level of Islam and understanding of Quran and Sunnah by going for ijtihad. And going for ijtihad itself is a long way, but it needs sabr. Okay, it needs sabr, but it needs a lot of work. Okay, it needs us to understand Islam better. It needs us to master the Quran and the Sunnah. Okay, there is a question: if there are non-Muslims, for example, among us, who wants to deal with this process, or, for example, I'm not very strong in this matter, how I can go for this process of Islamization of a human knowledge if I am still muqallid, means I'm still following the scholars in different matters and so on and so forth. So the answer is you can always cooperate. Okay, and see, it's a way of integration. You can always cooperate with the people who understand. Okay, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. And this is a part of integration, is to integrate, is to involve other people who are specialized in the field of study, for example, Islamic studies, with the issue that you want to Islamize it and to see it and to explain it better from an Islamic point of view. So you may explain it technically, and they may provide you with Islamic view and Islamic ijtihad. This is our way of implementing the Quran and the Sunnah. It started with taqlid, but we cannot stay there. We cannot stay with taqlid. Means always follow what the scholars said, what the scientists said, what the thinkers said about it. So we need to have this ijtihad, but we cannot be mujtahid without increasing our understanding of the Quran and the Sunnah, reading more, asking more, and then trying to learn our deen and our religion. So it came to the last part, which is the Islamization of human knowledge, methodologies, strategies, and ideas. So the general methodology based on Tawheed means anything that we are going to Islamize, anything, any ideas, any concept that we are going to Islamize, it started from the Tawheed, means based on this aqidah, that what we are doing is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As I told you, is it compatible with my aqidah, yes or no? It has a relation with my deen, yes or no? The second thing is knowledge and the unity of truth. The truth, the haqiqah is always one. Okay, there is a unity in terms of haqiqah, is always one and is always there. And therefore we need to look for this haqq. Why we are saying this? Because nowadays, when you read articles, when you read books, you may see that so many people are saying that this is the truth and that's the truth and that's what we need to look for and this is the reality. No, the reality is that the body is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the spirit, and this life itself is a test, and therefore medicine is here to fix, for example, is to fix so many issues and so many problems. If we see it from a maqasidic point of view, is here to prevent life, is to prevent the deen, is to prevent lineage, and is to prevent aql as well. Okay, so there is a purpose with the medicine, and this is the truth of this knowledge in reality, that we always keep it in mind when we deal with the articles, when we deal with the concept, when we deal with the knowledge at all. This is the matter of knowledge. It's not, for example, money. It's not a well-being of the state and this and that. No, always focus on a specific maqasid that concern your field. Unity of life, integration of wahy and aql. So there is integration of wahy and aql. Sometimes we may think that because we are dealing with the body, it has nothing to do with what we call it wahy, for example, the Quran and Sunnah. But as we explained, there is always a relation there, and we need to always keep this relation up, or we look for it. And finally, the comprehensiveness. Islam is about comprehensiveness. It's a way of life, means it concerns all things that we have it in our life. So concerning the strategies, the first strategy is by Al-Faruqi rahimahullah. And Al-Faruqi, he said, the process of Islamization of human knowledge, and let's talk about medicine itself. So for example, how we Islamize something which is in our field, in medicine, concepts or theories or practices, how we can Islamize this. So he said the level of Western knowledge here, let's say medicine and Islamic legacy must be the same. And we start from the same point, okay? What Islam say about this and what Western knowledge say about this concept, okay? Must start it together. And then we have mastery of disciplinary substantive knowledge, and then a mastery of analytic and synthetic techniques to come out with university textbook. So he said it's like how we can Islamize our field. He said we must start from Islamic legacy and the Western knowledge at the same time. Okay, it's not, there is no superiority of one of them. And then we go to the second step, substantive knowledge, and then mastery of analytic techniques, also the methods. So we try to Islamize the methods itself. Okay, so the methods means the way how we do things, especially if we are practical, for example, practical medicine or clinical medicine, for example. So how the method, how we implement things must be also Islamized, means the way how we do things, the way how we talk, the way how we deal with the people. Everything that concern medicine must be Islamized at the at the same time. Okay, so this is al-Faruqi, is just explanation. So this is more detailed way and strategy how we Islamize the human knowledge based on al-Faruqi framework. We have another strategy with Kamal Hassan, Prof. Kamal Hassan, as the distinguished professor in IIUM University, one of the distinguished scholars in Malaysia itself. So he said this process started by harmonization. What does it mean? Harmonization means to take what is good from the Western perspective, which is not against our culture, which is not against our values, which is not against our ethics. For example, the word governance. Okay, the word governance, administration, for example, how we did with that in our hospitals and in our clinics. He said it's a way of harmonization. Administration is always good. Governance is always good. The goodness is always good. So we take this concept and we try to practice it in our hospitals, for example. But we cannot take everything without questioning as we talk about it. And then he said the second step is the alternatives. After harmonization, we go to alternatives. What is the alternative? Islamic alternative to what we are doing. Okay, Islamic alternative to what we are practicing and what we are doing. For example, there are some acts, for example. Some of us are acting in certain way, which is not Islamic. How we can do this by trying to find the Islamic alternatives. Okay, and the objective, he said, the goodness in dunya and akhirah, and we talk about it as a falah. And finally, he said that the reform start with the curriculum in universities and character and work ethics. Sorry, and we do have another strategy by Abdulaziz Barghout, Professor Abdulaziz Barghout, but the most important one are the first two. Finally, the last minutes or 2 minutes, I would like just to tell you that what is not Islamization. Islamization is not justification. What does it mean, justification? In many cases, we read articles when we see, for example, all the ideas are Western ideas, has nothing to do about it. And finally, we find that justification, hadith here and ayah there, okay, verses from Quran there. This is not Islamization. This is just justification of what we have. And it's not for barakah. Means we just say Bismillah and Alhamdulillah, this and that. We start our article with the Bismillah, but from the beginning till the end, there is nothing to do with Islam. And finally, it's not adding references anyway. Okay, means put in verses and put in hadith anywhere just to justify that this is Islamization. I stop here. Hopefully, inshallah, now at least you have some ideas about Islamization and the process and so on and so forth, and hopefully you benefit something from this lecture. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. So any questions? And sorry for making it a little bit more. I thought it was 5 or 5:30.
It's 4:30, Dr. Ramzi. It's okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Ramzi, for your extensive, detailed explanation about Islamization and also IHK. I really feel that we benefit the session and we understand regarding the principles and also the practical parts of the topic as well. So now we open for questions to all participants if you had any questions pertaining to the topic and also Islamization. Any burning question? One question, probably. If there's no question, can I just ask one question, Dr. Ramzi, for the behalf of the participant?
Okay.
What I can echo from what your presentation just now is that Islamization of human knowledge begins with understanding of ourselves. We need to understand our roots, history, and also identity, meaning that we need to understand our purpose of life, which is to success in this world and hereafter, and also to perform ibadah while doing all this process in this world. And indirectly, we try to put our knowledge into a proper place to practice it accordingly. So does it mean that as a medical practitioners, when we do our medical practice ethically and professionally according to the guidelines with the intention of the best interest of the patient, we are also actually practically make Islamization of the human knowledge.
You mean in terms of practice?
Yeah.
Yeah, Islamization of human knowledge actually it's not concerned with what we call it, Dr. Saiful. It's not concerned only with the academia. Okay, it's also with the practice. If you follow the guidelines, also there is always a room there to, as I told you, we need always to question what we are doing, and we try to make it in line with the Islamic understanding and Islamic perspective. And there is a lot to do actually. I will give you example. For example, I don't remember, maybe last year or a year before, some ask about, for example, the ethics and dealing with the patients in hospitals based on Islamic ethics. And I remember this when I mentioned that it became a question of business, you see. And as one of the sisters, I think, mentioned that sometimes it's not a question of guidelines. Sometimes even with the niyyah, we can Islamize things. Even with the niyyah, with our niyyah. You see, in a business, they told you to smile, okay? Just to smile, welcome, this and that. It's question of money, it's question of business, okay? In Islam, our Prophet ﷺ said, Al-ibtisama fi wajhi akhika sadaqa. What's the difference between two is the niyyah. So the first thing is a question of business. You just smile to maybe you get the attention of those people and you make money. The second one, you are making it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because our Prophet ﷺ said, Al-ibtisama fi wajhi akhika sadaqa, means when you smile in the face of your brothers and sisters, equal what? Equal like you are making sadaqah. You see, so just with the niyyah, we can Islamize things. But as I told you, this is a simple example, but there are a lot of examples that we need to go deeper in our fiqh, usul al-fiqh, because we have a lot of things that we can learn from that. I will give you another example. Sometimes there is, for example, in terms of ethics, we see it from ethical point of view and in terms of values. Sometimes some medical doctors, not specifically in Malaysia, but in all over the world, they don't have the way, they don't know how to talk to someone, for example, who is going for crucial surgery, for example. How we can talk to this kind of people, how we can talk to the people if they are in critical condition. So there is always, for example, our Prophet ﷺ, he said there is always a way to do this. He say, the hadith say, كَانَ يُعْجِبُهُ الْفَالُ الْحَسَنِ, means our Prophet ﷺ always mentions something good, even the situation is worse. You see? So with this way, in reality, we are trying to practice something that the Prophet ﷺ used to do, and we are aligned with the guidelines that we have it, and at the same time, in reality, we are doing things from an Islamic point of view. So the Prophet ﷺ can يعجبه الفعل الحسن. We understand also when we read the Sunnah, and this is a good example for you as a practitioners. The Prophet ﷺ, when he used to visit someone who is sick, he used always to say the good words. You see, for example, لا تقلق, don't worry, it will be okay, inshallah. There is no matter. Tomorrow, inshallah, you pray with us. After tomorrow, inshallah, you will be okay. It's just a question of, even you know that the situation is very crucial and the things is very serious, but still there is always a door when you can follow the Quran and when you can follow the Sunnah. It's better than you say, what I can do for you. This is life or something else. You see, it's also based on guideline. No one is going to ask you why you said that, because you said the reality. I cannot do something for you, right? But you see the difference between two? SubhanAllah, is just the question of niyyah and understand how the Prophet ﷺ and how the Sunnah used to work. And therefore, when you practice it in reality, it doesn't take from you a lot. This is the first thing. What are you going to lose when you say, for example, don't worry, it's something okay, inshallah, you will feel okay in just few days. Tomorrow, inshallah, you pray with us. you will do this after a while, inshallah. You used to do sport. Yes, for example, don't worry about that. It's a matter of days, inshallah, and you will go back to what you used to do. You smile, you do this, you see, so it's question of spreading what we call it, spreading hope. And in reality, this is the real matter of medical doctors, is to spread the hope. You see that in Arabic, the word in Arabic for the tabib, for the medical doctor, we don't call them medical doctor, we call them al-hakim, means the wiser, the one who used the hikmah, the one who used the wisdom, you see. And using wisdom means to put things on its real place. You see, in critical situation, you see, the people can follow what you are going to say. For that, we need to be careful. What we are going to say, people will follow, okay? And therefore, if you have this mentality, you always try to learn something from the Quran and the Sunnah, and for the sake of practicing it in this way, therefore, you will be aligned with the guidelines. At the same time, in reality, it doesn't cost you a lot. And in many cases, it's just a question of niyyah. Okay, you smile. Anyway, you are going to smile with your patients, but smiling based on the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ is not like smiling just for the sake of business or something else. You see the difference? It's like when you sleep at night. You see, this is something that very good to know it, inshallah. There is a difference if you sleep and in your mind to wake up early and pray subh on time. You see, so you sleep and in your mind to wake up and pray subh on time. You see this niyyah, and I sleep to wake up and go to work. You see, so the scholars, subhanallah, they said, when you sleep, because your attention is to wake up early and pray subh on time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you what? Will give you hasanat, even you are sleeping, subhanallah. Because this sleeping is a process, is a way to pray, you see. And my sleeping is just to take a rest and wake up in the morning and go to work and do ordinary things. So we can change things just with our niyyah, as I told you. And the second thing, which is more important, is questioning what we are doing. Questioning what we are doing and what we are perceiving all the time. Okay, we cannot just accept the words. We need to ask about it, and we need to, to discuss it and talk about it all the time. For example, why we are calling someone who is suffering a client, why we are calling someone who came to us seeking help, we are calling them customers. It's like they came to Jaya Grocer. So what's the difference between us and Jaya Grocer or TMG? If we all of them, we are calling them clients and we are calling them customers. No, he is a patient and he needs help or she needs help, and therefore we try to deal with them based on this understanding. Even if we cannot change the words, even if we cannot change everything around us, but still in ourselves, with ourselves, we can change things. Okay, we can change things. It started with the small things in our life. Always I said that hopefully I answer your question, Dr. Saiful.
Yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Ramzi. It's crystal clear. Another one question, actually, I think will be the last question from the participant. Salam, what are the advices on how to start the stage of ijtihad from being taqi in our daily life? This is from Dr. Shazan.
Okay, so I used to teach this subject, which is creative thinking, and I found that sometimes we always have these big ideas. Okay, for example, sometimes we focus on the ummah. Okay, how to change the ummah, how to change Malaysia, how to change the country, this and that. But it's a very good question, sister, because in many cases we need to start with ourselves. Okay, we need to start with ourselves, and we need to have this process of muhasabah before going to ijtihad. Okay, so to avoid taqlid and to become a mujtahid, it's not something between day and night. Okay, it's a long process, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help us if we try to change ourselves. And we need to change ourselves. For example, if we want to change ourselves, we need to have this muhasabah in daily basis. And if you want to control ijtihad, you need to control the first hour after you wake up.
You see, so after you wake up, what you are doing at the first hour after you wake up. Many of us, after praying subh, for example, we spend half an hour, 40 minutes in our, what we call it, in our doing our stuff and in our breakfast and this and that 1 hour. So how we can change this and make it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This is the first step for ijtihad. Okay, how we can start my relation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala every day? It started from the first hour. Am I, for example, am I reading Quran? Am I trying to understand Quran in daily basis? Am I trying to understand Hadith, for example, during the weekend? I need to have a time between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there is no good thing than to start our day with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't tell me it's a question of time, okay? If you don't have a time, and then know that you don't have a time as a medical doctor. Therefore, you need to wake up earlier, okay? At least half an hour before that, and make this time between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It started with the Quran, relationship with the Quran. The ijtihad of anything that you want to be good on it, especially in Islamic studies, it started with Quran. Read Quran a lot and try to understand Quran and try to implement Quran. Remember the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha in simple word. She said that the Prophet sallallahu kana Qur'anan yamshi bayna an-nas. You see, so she said that when you see the Prophet sallallahu, it's like you see the Quran. This is ijtihad. Means you try to understand Quran and the Sunnah and you try to implement it in your life as much as you can. This is the starting point. So the Prophet used to be as a Quran yamshi bayna an-nas. It's like you see the Quran. Why? Because he practiced it. When you learn something, just practice it. This is the first thing. The second thing, you cannot avoid reading books. You cannot avoid, for example, reading the fiqh. Okay, and we need this power from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us this power to read fiqh, for example, one book of fiqh, and try to keep on your madhab, okay, Shafi'i madhab. Try to choose one book of fiqh and try to read it from the beginning till the end. Again and again and again, over and over and over. Start and try to understand this fiqh first. Try to understand, because there are a lot of things that has a direct relation with your field in different parts. For example, when we talk about tahara, you see, in tahara, in reality, we have the types of water. In Madhab Shafi'i, we have 4 types of water. And it has a strong relation with tahara, cleanliness, okay? And cleanliness and to be pure also has a relation with the medicine. So you can read what the scholars are saying about it. But the time you start develop yourself, I said the first thing is the daily basis and to have relation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you this power. The second thing is to focus a lot on Quran. Okay, focus a lot on Quran, reading Quran, understanding Quran, have time during the weekends, in the morning, try to have this relation. The third thing is to start reading these books, but not the volumes, okay, not the big books, just a small one, a short one, okay, introductions, summaries, this kind of understanding, and try step by step to develop yourself. And more than that, if you have the opportunity, and nowadays, alhamdulillah, we do have so many opportunities to attend workshops about, for example, maqasid al-sharia, how to implement maqasid al-sharia, how to use the maqasid, how to understand this and that. So always try to relay these kind of things directly with your field of study, and you will start see that there are so many things you will see differently in your field of study, actually, because you are trying to implement what you are understanding from Quran and Sunnah and from the maqasid and from the workshop that you are attending in your field of study, and you start see the differences, inshallah. This is the easiest way how to do things, not to be specialized in Islamic studies but automatically, but it's the easiest way how to start everything. But try to have this relation with Deen, brothers and sisters. Try to have this relation with Deen in daily basis, okay? Try to build your days on your relation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The starting morning is between you and Allah, and then give time to others. Give time to your wives, give time to your husbands, give time to your parents, give time to the others. But the first half an hour and the first hour after you wake up, try to build your relation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the pure way and the pure method to establish this kind of methods, inshallah. Hopefully I answer your question.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ramzi. I think we have come to the end of our session today. I present my School of Medicine would like to express gratitude and thanks to you, Dr. Ramzi, for your patience and your contributions in delivering the topics to our postgrad clinical students. I really hope that this session will benefit all of us. For all students, there will be one assignment after the end of all 4 topics delivered by Centris will be in April 2022. The assignment will be in the form of group assignment, so it will make it easier for you guys to discuss, and after that write your points in the format of essay. I will discuss and also inform about the details later in the email, and so that you guys can know how to submit and how to form the group in the link provided later. This session today also will be already recorded, and it will be shared via email, inshallah, in 1 week time. With that, let us end our session with Tasbih Kifaras to us. Thank you very much once again, Dr. Ramzi, and thank you to all participants.
Thank you, Dr. Saiful, and thank you for all, and thanks for giving this opportunity, alhamdulillah. So anything in the future, inshallah, so no problem, I will be always in service. And if you want to contact me in social media, okay, it's a question of globalization. In social media, just put my name, Ramzi Bendebka, you will find me. Any questions, anything I can help, I will be always there, inshallah. Thank you so much.
Inshallah, thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Salam wa rahmatullah, all of you. Salam alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.